Welcome to the SubSummit podcast. Real conversations with the operators scaling subscription, membership, and recurring revenue in today's commerce landscape.
So Bill McHenry has spent decades working across manufacturing, importing, retail, and logistics, giving him a firsthand look at how difficult physical commerce has become. As founder and CEO of Widgeteer, Bill understands the real costs behind moving products at scale, from tariffs and freight, which are probably really topical right now.
Very top.
Inventory and cash flow. And on this episode of the SubSummit podcast, he shares why operational efficiency is becoming just as important as marketing and what modern brands underestimate about supply chains, how today's economic pressures are changing the rules of commerce. I'm excited to chat with him. Bill, welcome to the SubSummit podcast.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate your time today.
Happy to have you here. So let's talk about it. Is it harder to profitably move physical products today than at any other point in your career?
Oh, it really is. There's so many changes that go on with the tariffs and with changes. You know, like the other day, I had heard that they were out of chassis. And so companies were going out and actually buying chassis to move containers from the rail yard to their warehouses. You know, and it's constant change like that and different things.
Well, what types of products and sales channels does Widgeteer operate in today?
We're in a lot of different channels. I've always joked that we work with anybody that'll pay me, but I take it a step further. We're, of course, in retail and wholesale and food service. We sell a lot of subscription box, work with a lot of subscription box like FabFitFun and Condé Nast and Bespoke as well. Do a lot of private label for a lot of different customers. So we're across the board and all in housewares. So we work with entertaining products for housewares.
So talk about how the definition of a successful product has changed over the years, because as technology increases and improves, I'm sure a lot of things have changed in your world as well.
It's been amazing how things have changed and what's the definition of success is anymore. We're constantly looking for new innovation. All our customers continue to push us, and I've even responded to a couple buyers where they've apologized for pushing us, and I've actually thanked them for pushing us because it's made us a better company.
All right. How have tariffs and freight and inventory timing changed the economics of physical commerce?
The tariff situation was frankly horrible, especially when they were first announced, when it went to 144%. We held a whole bunch of containers in China. Couldn't bring them into the country. I had a lot of ticked off vendors, to be honest. But you know, a couple things came out of this whole thing. One is I actually sat down with my customers and my vendors and us and talked about what was going on. And we all needed to stay in business. We all had employees. We needed to, you know, everybody, like, as I always say, mama needs new shoes. Right. And everyone's in the same boat. So we sat down to figure out how we could make it work. And as the tariffs kind of slowed down, especially out of China, it got better. But the challenge went on from there. And an example, we had a big container coming from India in September, and the tariff went from 3% to 53%. Oh
my gosh.
And it was a $50,000 bill. And when it got here, and the challenge is, of course, we're paying for the product ahead of time, we're paying for the tariff ahead of time, we're paying for the duty ahead of time, and our forwarder needs to be paid, and then we ship it a couple weeks later to our customer who now says, Bill, our terms are 2.5%, 120 days. So it's made it very difficult, very expensive.
So not only have the tariffs been challenging, but upfront tariffs even more challenging than that. How do they impact cash flow? You know, how does that help you plan?
Well, that's probably been the biggest challenge we've had is cash flow. You know, you have to plan as much as you can. What we decided to do about this time last year is that we would only bring product in that we knew was sold or was going to be sold. We didn't risk things anymore. Where in the past we might bring in 1,000 pieces of something and kind of a hope and a prayer, and we don't do that anymore.
So are brands tying up more cash or less cash than they were a handful of years ago?
Oh, much more. much more because of all that outlay. And then you have things that continuously change, like when the tariffs started to slow down a little bit, the Chinese government, as an example, was giving their factories, they were actually subsidizing a 9% VAT tax. And as the tariffs kind of subsided, the VAT tax, the Chinese government quit subsidizing the VAT tax, which wound up increasing our pricing because all of a sudden the factories had this extra 9% that they had to cover.
My understanding is that you're going to be one of the first in line when they're rebating the tariffs back to you now, right?
We were one of the first in line. We haven't seen it yet. I keep hearing that we're going to. I'm not counting on anything ever because I don't think you can count on anything until it's in my hand. But we were first in line.
I'm thinking it could be a good Christmas for you.
It will be very helpful. The challenge we got behind, of course, with some of our vendors, so that it will keep things at bay. The other thing that happened was a lot of our vendors started helping us with terms, which was really, really interesting because, again, they had to stay in business too. And so they worked out ways of doing it. And I know your last guest made a comment about the relationships with people. And my company is privately owned and family owned, and all our factories are privately owned and family owned. And the relationship I have with these factories and the owners of the factories have saved us. We probably saved them too, but we've saved each other, maybe is the way to say it.
I think if like anything else in today's growing climate and global world, the relationships are so important, and that's got to be the silver lining in all of this, that the relationships probably have really solidified over the last year.
It really did, and it was really neat to see. We have great relationships. I know the husbands, wives, daughters, sons with the vendors, and I've also seen it with our vendors here in the United States, with our forwarder. They've been amazing to work with, and we've had challenges. We're like, well, what are we going to do? And I think the communication is the most important thing. We've never run and hid. We've actually communicated with all our vendors. And our customers, the same way. All of them really, really have worked with us. It's a good feeling to know that there's, the world is full of a lot of nice people, even though a lot of people don't think so.
Not just vendor and client relationships, it's friendships and relationships and community.
It really is. They beat us up, and we beat them up too. But it's we all know we have to make money.
Boxers in the ring. At the end, you still give each other hugs, right?
That's right. But I always say, profit isn't a four-letter word, and it really is.
Understood. Other than unpredictability in the marketplace today, is there anything else of running the hardest part of running a physical business where you're actually shipping products here and there?
I think people take for granted the whole process of shipping something and making something. When we start, we want to make sure we have a demand for the product. We want to talk to all our customers to make sure there's some interest. And then you have to start with all the vendor compliance situations where you got to make sure your packaging is labeled correctly and your product is labeled. It's in the right box, it's the right count, it doesn't get broken, and so on and so forth. There's always something that comes up, though. And what I've always told our customers is that I promise you're going to love our products, but the only thing other promise I'll make is I have integrity. And we'll follow up and follow through. We're going to make mistakes, but if we make a mistake, we're going to follow up and follow through with that. And I think that's really helped us over time. We just had a customer out in California where we shipped them product on a pallet like they would expect to get into their warehouse, and they hadn't thought about it. They wound up shipping our glass product to their stores by Federal Express. And we all know how Federal Express and UPS and all these others deliver. They give it a toss. And, it's glass. It even says fragile glass on the box. So stuff like that happens.
Well, let's talk about the differences between digital first and maybe a physical product. What is it that the digital first operators might misunderstand about supply chains and physical products themselves?
Well, that's interesting because digital first, they don't really have a product that they're selling. They're selling a service, and we don't. We have a product, so you have to really pay attention to that and think about what can really happen with that product, and can it break? Can it this? I was talking to a 3PL in here earlier, and they were in a cave. I thought that was interesting. I had never heard of that before. But I said to the guy, I said, well, what about insuring product in the cave? Well, he hadn't thought of that, because we have insurance in our 3PL with, fire and,
Right.
water and, but he's in a cave. So if it collapses or the cave, I don't know, is there insurance for that? And he's like, well, I better check that out. So there's constantly thinking about something other than that.
So let's talk about e-commerce. Is e-commerce shifting back towards fundamentals like margins, inventory, and cash flow?
Sort of. I still think that the demand is what's really important first. But then with e-commerce, I know our cost of shipping out of our warehouse has gone from, I think, like $2.30 for every item we sell to $6.10 for every item we sell. And that includes everything, because you have to think about, there's someone physically doing it, but then there's the box, and then there's the tape, and then there's, this and all these things and stickers. And I know, like, our labels, I think now are almost $1 a label. And it's insane. So you have to really pay attention to the profit with e-commerce.
What surprised you the most about selling products through TikTok, let's say?
That's really an interesting question, because, I didn't even know how to spell TikTok about 2 years ago. So that was really interesting. And I truthfully didn't think it would do well. But what I'm amazed at is if the product hits, how well it can sell. And the example we had is we have an oil and vinegar tray that this gal that's our procurement manager, one night in her apartment with her girlfriends, they were having a party and they did a video on how it worked. And she put it online on a Friday night, and Saturday morning she called me and she says, Bill, I've got like 100,000 views of this video. And so I started looking at, well, we had 1.3 million views in, I think, 4 days. It was incredible. We've since had a lot more, but it was awesome because we had about 6,000 pieces in inventory, which I wasn't sure was going to be enough for Christmas, but I thought it might be. And this was in November, so I thought we'd be in pretty good shape. 4 days, Doug, it was sold.
Wow.
And that sounds great, but the challenge now is all that product's made in China. So now I've got to order it. I got to get in line in the factory. And oh yeah, by the way, Chinese New Year is coming. And I got to make sure that we try and get some stuff out. Then we got to ship it. We got to do this. And then I got to pay for everything again. And in April, I replaced the product that we'd sold. So it was like 5 months.
So is social commerce forcing brands to move faster for product development? It sounds like it is.
Kind of. Yeah, it really is. And that's been really hard. We have some glasses that have flowers in it, and we launched it we've been working on it for about 18 months, but we launched it this spring, and it's sold just amazingly. I think we're in every Hallmark store in the country, and it's just been a wow. But we now realize that it's all spring colors. It's pink and blue and all this stuff, and that's not going to sell in the fall. So we realized it the other day. So now we're working on something that sells in the fall, and it's really amazing with seasonal items. Like we had a customer the other day, they were buying our Valentine's product, and I was kind of curious, and she said, we buy your Valentine's products because you don't say Valentine's. You have hearts and love and stuff like that, things that will last longer than Valentine's Day. We don't sell Easter, we sell spring, right. So you have to really pay attention to that.
So let's talk about supply chain trends and what brands should maybe be paying attention to right now.
A lot of it is, I think, the communication with your vendor and also with your customer. And it kind of goes back, talked a little bit about it before, with all the things from labeling it right and making sure it's packaged right and understanding from the start of when it's made in the factory, it's put on a container, it's shipped, by rail to Chicago, and then we ship it to somewhere. And then what happens there? Do they ship it to their stores? Do they send e-commerce? So really paying attention to the whole flow. And the communication piece, it kind of goes simple, I know, but people don't communicate. And I see that with my son, who's our director of sales. He communicates through text. It makes me crazy. Pick up the phone, call somebody, and tell them what's going on, and that's the way to resolve things. And so it's the communication.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
It's
Old
really
school,
true.
picking up the phone and making a call.
It really is true.
I got it. So what's exciting for you here at SubSummit this year? Is this the first attendance?
It's actually the second.
Second time.
And we came here with just our eyes open the first time, and just wanted to learn and see what we could come up with. And we came out of this with a lot of really interesting things. This year, we're thinking about launching another brand. And I'm trying to figure out whether to launch it, through a box type program, because I see some opportunity there. We also are hoping to meet some people that are in the box, industry, of course. That's always a plus. But it's more to learn a little bit more about us developing our own box and trying to sell that. And like I said, this new brand idea I have of mine, I don't want to say it yet because every time I say something, I jinx it. So I won't say anything more than that. But I'm looking forward to that. And we've been wandering around looking for that.
I know they say, and I'm going to speak for myself specifically, but I know they say that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. No. But what are you learning that you never thought you'd learn before about the world of commerce today?
Well, the AI thing is amazing to me. I now know how to spell ChatGPT. And I thought it was B, but there's P, I heard.
Okay.
So that's really fascinating to me. In fact, I was listening to the guy before me, and he was talking about AI, and I was thinking, as I was standing back there, I was thinking to myself, I need to learn more about that. And I think that's important. And that kind of surprises me because it goes back to communication. I believe that you and I should talk. And now there's this robot now talking, and I'm like, well, yeah, but it's going to be interesting to see how that all works. So that's fascinating to me.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you sharing what you do here on the SubSummit podcast stage. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the SubSummit podcast. If you want to be in the room with the operators building the next era of subscription and commerce, head to subsummit.com and grab your pass now. Make sure to follow the SubSummit podcast so you don't miss upcoming interviews with the founders, brands, and partners shaping the industry. We'll see you at the crossroads.